So my name is Landin Martins from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm on a team called Cerberus, which has 5 to 6 members, me being the tech lead, and we're in the product and tech wireless product group. I believe that's what it's called now. The name has changed a couple of times, but I believe that's what it is now. So as far as life of a developer, I'll preface this. I don't do as much development nowadays that I would like. I would say I think I've touched one piece of code in 6 months. I'm hoping that's going to be changing. The last 6 months have just been, there's a lot of been, new people joining the team, a lot of onboarding and stuff like that, and the QA transition, of course, at the beginning of the year. But I would say as far as kind of one of the biggest challenges of being a developer is actually not a technical challenge. Most of us, we'd love to learn be that new technologies or a new something in Windows or whatever it may be. And I would say that the biggest problem is, I'm going to say, the processes that the company puts forward is either mandated or suggested, and trying to keep up with that trend, trying to keep up with the different things that the company is trying, different methodologies. Sometimes they're not even technical. They could be, how does your team operate? How do you handle injections? How do you talk about the work that gets done? And so I would say, as a developer, and though I see this more as a tech lead, when I've talked to my developers, their main frustrations are the day-to-day or month-to-month changes that the company as a whole is sort of rolling downhill that we have to try to keep up with.
That is really interesting, because I think we would say theoretically those things are in place to help us be more effective, to help us make better product.
Yeah, and you're correct. I would say the main frustration that I've seen is that right now we don't have a controlled stream of changes. We have, effectively, you can think of it like different wings of the company, and when each one is requesting a change, a process, deviation, information, reports, or what have you, you have all these different people not in coordination and communication, all requesting these changes. It is a really rough sea, just trying to keep our head above water while trying to do our own work and focus on keeping our service up running, injections from carriers for our team specifically, while also trying to do all these other things. I would say it's because it's probably not coordinated, in my advice, or in my perspective.
So is this a pendulum swing that happens where we go, we're too decentralized and then we're too centralized, and like we just can't find the right spot? Because what you're talking about is, let's narrow it all and simplify it at the risk of bottleneck, right?
Yeah. I'll preface this. I think we're going in the right direction at the company with what I've seen in the past, say, 2-3 months. So I don't want to necessarily say, oh, it's all been awful. That's not what I'm trying to get across, especially with where I see us going in the next 4 months. I do think it's definitely in the right direction, especially the most recent changes. But historically, in the past 2 years, my accountability, my authority, what I do in a role, especially as like a tech lead and stuff like that, and then of course that has to then go downstream to the developers. What we do on a day-to-day basis and how we do it has changed so much, from process to how we have to log things, how we create whether it's TFS ticket or whatever else it has been. And it's always hard to keep up, where sometimes we think we're doing it right and then we're not. And then we're like, this person's requesting, we now have to log in and do it in this kind of format. And it's like, well, we don't have time for that. We're doing this other ask right now. And so historically, it's been really rough. It is smoothing out, and the process that we are moving towards right now, I really like, actually, personally. I think it's the right direction. So hopefully we continue on this path. The pendulum doesn't swing another way. I'm trying not to ramble too much, basically, but yeah, I would say that's what it is. Going forward, I'm happy, but historically, the problems have been just these huge pendulum swings from various departments or wings of the company and people from high above, basically.
Thank you. It's fine if you ramble. I like these best when I'm not having to ask questions. I am going to go back. I'm going to call back to something I think I heard you say, which is that you've hardly touched code personally.
Yeah.
And I'd like to just have you sort of described that experience? Like, was it, did you elect to do that, or did you just one day realize you weren't writing code? Like, how does that happen
Yeah.
to you?
So, okay, I'll probably break this up into two parts. There's how it happened, and then there's the reflection of what it was. As far as how it happened, it wasn't like one thing. And most of these things, it's never just one thing. The big one was my team sort of dissolved last year to the point where it was like me and one other person trying to keep everything up and running. And so we had, in a very short period of time, we hired an entirely new team where most of the members were new to the company, some new to Canada. And so the onboarding of trying to get them up to the company standards, my team standards. The service that we work with is very long standing and is mission critical. So it's very important to know certain processes, landmine in the code bases. And so the onboarding and training, especially at the beginning of the year, like January or February, was effectively over capacity. It was like over 100% of my use case. And so it has come back to where it's more manageable, but I'm still onboarding. So it went from like say 110% of my time to now it's maybe like 50 to 60% of my time, and I'm getting that percentage down. And then now that the onboarding is decreasing, I'm able to spend more time in roles that I effectively just completely neglected for the most part, which is obviously not a good thing. Because there's other things other than development, like there was release management, there's risk mitigation, auditing the code, trying to figure out the releases, working with stakeholders or client managers on features and all this kind of stuff, determining the LOEs or level of efforts to figure out how much something is going to take, timelines and all that kind of stuff. And so all these different kind of roles are now coming back into play. And so now I have this battle of all these different roles that are non-development. And so one of my things that I've been actively doing is working with people on my team to figure out what they would actually enjoy doing, which not only helps train them up and gives them more autonomy and authority on our team and as a service and helps them grow, but it also takes work off of my plate. Because honestly, me doing all this work isn't great. That's a ticking time bomb for a disaster, burnout, stress, and also just dropping something, missing something, right? And so it was sort of a self-reflection. I don't know when it necessarily happened, but I want to say it was about 3 to 4 months ago. I was like, man, I don't remember the last time I really touched code. Not really. I do code reviews and stuff like that. So I'm still in the process, the life cycle of code that goes in, but I don't have my hands to the keyboard. And so as a result, one thing I'm looking towards, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do that. One, as mentioned, offloading effectively responsibility and authority to other members of the team. Because my goal is to get back into the code, because I don't know if everyone uses this analogy, but it's like if you are a knife in your drawer of your kitchen, you want your best developers, your most senior, to be the sharpest blade, right? But if you, and I know this is technically not right to the blade analogy, but if you use a blade, technically speaking, it gets duller. But in this case, if you don't use it, it gets duller. So maybe a bad analogy. But basically, we want you would think the best developers would be the ones that actually are able to keep up and keep in the code base, learn the new patterns, the new trends, the new industry, what have you. But when they are so distracted that they get pulled out of the code base, they will get rusty. And so that's one of my biggest fears, because I'm a geek at my heart. I got into this not caring about salary or school, or I want to just program and learn more about computers and technology. And so now that I've stepped away from that, it's been a vacuum in me that I'm starting to find this need. I'm like, I want to get back in there. Not to say I want to do it 100% or go back to just being a developer, but even just 20% of the time or 25% of the time would be kind of nice. So that's kind of what I'm working towards, just enough to facilitate my geekiness and my need, while at the same time keeping me sharp, so that way I can also make sure I keep everyone else in my team sharp and on their toes.